Hi, this is E.R. Brooks, and welcome back to Storytime with Brooks. Today we find ourselves in Chapter 15. So without further ado, here's Chapter 15. But first, I want to thank you all for all of your likes, watching the videos, comments, everything. I appreciate every single bit of love. I hope you enjoy this chapter, and without further ado, here is Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Cat and Mouse. Faye. A storm was coming, but that wasn't what I smelled. It was adventure on the wind, and it shivered down my spine. Atticus. Someone was swearing quite elaborately in German. I'm going to wash Evadne's mouth out with soap. She knows better than to cuss like... My thoughts came to a shuddering halt. The voice was male. What happened? You fell off something, you dummy. That's what happened. The memories came back in halting, random bursts. I lost my backpack and hit my head. Someone tried to catch me? There was the possibility of a bear. I fell off a cliff? Not in that order, stupid. No, duh, I'm not a moron. Oh yeah, who just fell off a cliff? I realized in the middle of this debate that the someone was still talking, except they were now also touching my head, and it hurt. A lot. Quit arguing and pay attention. We have a real problem here. Only the oldest blood uses German, and they are currently in my bubble. My eyes felt so heavy that I could barely manage to crack them open. I winced in the blinding light as I finally succeeded in regaining my vision. A canopy of green and brown spread out overhead, and a blurry shape loomed over me. I squinted, trying to force my eyes to focus on the resident blob and gather exactly why the heck he was messing with my head. Slowly, the details began to take shape, solidifying in front of me with agonizing slowness. The blob was leaning over me, gray eyes scrunched with worry. They were the color of the sky just before it starts to pour. In fact, they almost matched the sky that loomed angrily above us. Smooth face, regular eyes, round ears, no powerful essence. You're human, I managed to gasp in shock. The pain in my head was making it hard to think clearly. I didn't feel like myself. My eyes lingered on the pale white scar that ran down the left side of his face. It was jagged, starting from his temple and going to his jawbone. I wonder where he got that. What an astute observation, he snorted, drawing my attention from the scar back to the rest of his face. He had raven black hair that fell in soft layers and barely brushed his ears. Once again, those eyes caught me. They crinkled at the edges as he stifled a laugh. What were you expecting? A bear? He joked. His accent was strange but familiar, though I couldn't quite place it through the fog that resided in my mind. That's what I was hoping for, I think. Why are you touching my head? I demanded abruptly, changing the subject as I slapped his hand away. You are clearly in my personal bubble, and I'd appreciate it if you would stop being so rude and back the heck off. I am vulnerable in this position. I jerked upright, knocking my already aching head into his. Ouch! Gosh, Faye, take it easy for a minute, he said in exasperation as he placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. Dizziness exploded in my brain, and stars danced in front of my eyes. Taking huge, heaving gasps, I struggled to remain in my newly acquired sitting position as I rested my head between my knees. I'm going to throw up if the world doesn't stop spinning. Just take some deep breaths, and hopefully the vertigo will go away, he said as he gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Why is he touching me? I think I'm going to stab him for his audacity. We are in absolutely no condition to be stabbing anything. The way our luck is going, you would probably end up stabbing yourself. I most certainly would not. I jerked away from him, growling as I hugged my knees tighter to my chest. What part of stay out of my bubble did you not understand, you no-good, dirty, rotten fish brain? I seethed. The insult was that of a third grader, but I didn't have the energy to care, let alone come up with a more age-appropriate insult. The world was spinning, and I was much too busy digging my knees into my eye sockets as I desperately tried not to throw up on the blob with gray eyes. It would serve him right. Hey, maybe if I throw up on him, he would go away. Just get him out of here, and then you can throw up. Maybe you should lie back down, he said, worry lacing his voice. Maybe you can just shut up. I'll be fine, I snapped angrily. Something was nagging incessantly at the back of my mind, something that bothered me about this whole situation. but I couldn't put my finger on what I was missing. My thoughts were too scrambled, and my brain was gearing up to split into one massive headache. Well, excuse me for trying to help you, he griped. I don't need your help, I nearly moaned as another wave of nausea rolled over me. I choked back the bitter-tasting bile that rose in my throat as I struggled to orient myself. I regret eating that banana for breakfast. After all I had been through, I was suddenly incapacitated by nausea and a little scratch on my head. Some guardian I was going to be. If you're going to throw up, get it done now. You've got to get to the gate. I'll agree that you don't need any of my help in falling off things, he replied in amusement. Gray-eyed blob with fish brain is a smarty pants. Fish brain blobby-eyed smarty pants. That's funny. I believe it is your turn to make a reply. Oh, right. That was none of your business, I said loftily. My dignity plummeted as I proceeded to crawl away from him and my lofty statement and throw up behind a tree trunk. Wait! I was supposed to throw up on him! Crap! I messed it up! He was beside me again, holding out a handkerchief for me to wipe my mouth on. I grudgingly accepted it, cradling my head in my hands as I struggled to calm my racing heartbeat. Time is running out. You fell in front of me. That makes it my business, he replied pointedly. Gum? My mouth tasted like something had died in it, but I knew better than to accept candy from a stranger. No, thank you, I barely managed to whisper. Breathe. Just breathe. Are you sure you're okay? Get rid of him. Why are you here? I demanded, managing to get my brain to latch onto a scrap of a logical objection. This is private property. I didn't realize it was, he said innocently. I was out hunting mushrooms and must have unknowingly wandered over some property lines. That's a rotten bologna sandwich right there, I snapped. We have signs posted. And what else was there? Oh, yeah. Did you somehow magically transport over the 10-foot wrought iron fence? Or are you suddenly skinny enough to fit through a 4-inch gap between the bars without even noticing? Between the two of us, there's only one mouse, and I assure you, it's me. Do you really think I'm stupid enough to believe your pathetic lies? Or do you just not value your own life enough that you completely disregarded the rumors and trespassed anyway? He shifted uncomfortably, and I mustered the energy to look up and glare at him. Besides, mushrooms aren't even in season right now. It was an honest mistake, he insisted. I rolled my eyes. He was obviously lying. You need to leave, I said coldly. I think I should get you home. You bashed your forehead open, and from the looks of it, it's deep. If it doesn't need stitches, it will need to be taped. Just go away, I sighed in exasperation as I succumbed to another wave of exhaustion and rested my head against my knees. I'll be fine, I promise. Forgive me if it's impertinent to not believe you. You did just fall off a cliff. It was not a cliff, I insisted, knowing full well it was. There was no stopping my annoyance as it grew within me. He didn't understand. I couldn't go back home. If I went back, I wouldn't have the strength of will to say goodbye again. I pushed myself up into a crouch, and the new wave of vertigo slammed into me. After a moment, I swallowed back another round of vomit that rose and stood up halfway, still bracing my hands on my knees as I fought back the acidic mush that rose in my throat. At least let me look at your head, he said quietly. I looked up at him, startled by the gentle tenderness in his tone. His eyes were unreadable as he carefully brushed his thumb beside the gash. Goosebumps rushed across my arms, but irritation flashed hot across my mind. My forehead was really smarting now, and something warm, that I could only assume was blood, slid down my temple and onto my cheek. The spinning world slowly came to a stop, and I finally felt ready to tell him off with a list that I had been tallying in my mind. He met my glare unflinchingly, his eyes now challenging me to a fight. The words died in my throat as an unexpected blush crept up my neck and set my cheeks aflame under the heat of his gaze. You were going to yell at him, remember? Quit going all ushy-gushy. It's downright embarrassing. I had been so long in the fairy realm that I had forgotten what humans were like. Marcus was human, but he didn't count. By now, he was more Faye than human. I quickly broke eye contact and looked around, trying to clear my head from ridiculous emotions and blushing. It was then that I actually noticed what was around us. My feigned indifference swiftly gave way to shock. Everything around me was wrong. I was no longer at the base of the hill I had just fallen from. I was on flat ground, with dead grass all around me and a different hill directly in front of me. To top it off, my backpack was beside the stranger. He must have grabbed it before coming to find me. He was the one there. He was the reason I fell off the cliff. Oh yes, he is the sole reason. It definitely had nothing to do with your paranoia and poor balance. Ancient oaks and ash surrounded us in an unnatural circle, and an unsettling stillness hung in the air. A long pile of moss-covered rocks was to my left, and I stared at the cairn in horror as realization dawned on me. What has he done? We do not belong here. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as a chill crept up my spine. I noticed a border of gray-brown mushrooms around the trees, and my horror grew. What did he do? He moved me from where I fell, and now his stupidity has put us in danger. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. A raven circled overhead, screaming mercilessly to the skies as I fought to contain my fear. We have to get out of here. The gray-eyed stranger's brows creased as he stared at me in confusion. Faye, what's wrong? The missing piece slid into place, and I finally realized what my injury-addled brain had neglected to notice. Earlier, when I had smacked my head into his, he had said my name, just as he had now. I had just been too sick and dizzy to realize it. The plot thickens. How does he know my name? I struggled to quell the growing panic in my mind. Already the shadows were jumping from tree to tree, growing larger with each second that I hesitated. My hand shook as the breeze that drifted through the clearing picked up to a howling gale. Not good. Not good. I made a split-second decision and snatched my backpack from beside him, slinging it over my shoulder in one fluid move. Then, before I could reconsider, I grabbed Gray-Eye's hands and dragged him from the clearing. A jolt of electricity ran up my arm from the contact, but I didn't dare let go. At that moment, we were in this together, whether I liked it or not. I couldn't leave him to the mercy of the ones that were coming. Even I wasn't that heartless. Leaves and dirt pelted our faces as we weaved and dodged between the trees. Shadows flickered in the corner of my eye, and I fought the ever-growing urge to look back. This way, Gray-Eyes shouted over the wind. He pulled me to the left, and we crashed through the low-hanging limbs of a locust tree. Sharp thorns tore at my skin and latched onto my clothes as we fought against the branches that had ensnared us. This was a terrible idea! I shrieked in pain as a branch I hadn't seen in time latched onto my arm and ripped the skin open. Just trust me, he yelled back. Trust you? I nearly screamed. Why should I trust you? You're the one that got us into this mess in the first place! At last, we broke through the underbrush and into a small clearing. I looked around cautiously, searching for danger. There were mushrooms here, but they grew in sporadic patches, and ahead I could see the faint outline of the worn dirt path winding its way through the dense forest. I think we lost them. Gray-Eyes looked at me with a triumphant smirk. See, I told you to trust me. I glared at him, wrestling with the violence that surged at his arrogance. It won't do any good to react. Oh, look! Mushrooms! I lunged and punched him in the eye as hard as I could. Au contraire, I think it does a lot of good. He stumbled backwards, raising a hand to his face in shock as I stepped back into a defensive stance. I was more than happy to hit him again if the opportunity presented itself. How do you know my name? I demanded angrily, ignoring the shooting pain that was pulsing up my arm from the impact of hitting him. And why are you really here? He regarded me for a moment, and I could see the gears shifting in his mind. At last, he spoke. You have to understand. Something was walking heavily through the leaves behind us, and he fell silent as I quickly pulled my knife from my boot and turned to face whatever monster had followed us here. Much to my surprise, it was not some terrible mythical monster, but 4 brawny strangers who now formed a menacing line that blocked any homeward escape. Brawny strangers that were undeniably human. How did they get on our property? How did they get through the fence? What have you done? I whispered, anger and confusion rushing through me as I struggled to figure out what was going on. I should have run after I hit him. I should have run and never looked back. I was a fool to try to demand information. You had one job. One. Go to the realm and free your sisters. Now think very carefully. How are you going to get yourself out of this? Your powers are too low. and you have been out of the realm for far too long to have any sort of an advantage. That leaves you with just you and your wits and the training that Artemis gave you. And just come with us, and nobody will get hurt. Just come with us, and nobody will get hurt, Gray Eyes said in a low voice. His hands were raised, palms facing me. I am not a spooked horse that needs to be calmed. My eyes narrowed as I took in the fact that he was slowly inching toward me. Stay away, I said with feigned vehemence, unsure of who'd threaten with my knife. Gray Eyes, no doubt he's the ringleader. I don't want you to get hurt, he said as he took another step toward me. I could almost believe the sincerity in his voice, but one look into those calculating gray eyes and I saw the truth. He could mean me nothing but harm. My eyes flickered around the clearing, looking for a way to escape. Gray Eyes now stood a mere 4 steps away, and the others were slowly spreading out and coming closer toward me. I was running out of time, and it was imperative that I act quickly before I lost my element of surprise. More crows circled overhead, and I began to form a hasty and dangerous plan of action. My only weapon would attract the old bloods like flies to honey, but if I did nothing, the trouble that had already followed me here would gain the upper hand over me. I have been in the realm for 8 years. How does he know my name? How did he know I was going to be here today? There were too many questions. Questions I didn't have time for. Faye, please. There was a desperate sort of pleading tone to his voice that made me want to punch him again. Surely he knew that I could see right through his feigned kindness. It was a risky bet on several fronts to intentionally use my inheritance. The first being that my heart was so weakened from being out of the realm that using it now could very well kill me. The second was a far more serious problem. The use of a Grimm's powers on mortals was, technically speaking, strictly forbidden. If one was mortally harmed by my powers outside of the realm, I was responsible to restore the life of said mortal or face the consequences. If I failed and harmed them, then my life would be forfeit. But if the threat at hand overwhelmed me in my weakened state, then I would fail in setting my sisters free. I have to reach the gate. I made my decision, and the air in the clearing hissed and crackled as an electric charge snapped to life around us. I was suddenly hungry for a fight. All he had to do was take 2 more steps, and then it would be my move. I would make him regret the day he chose to pick a fight with me. You just never know when to back down, do you? He sighed as he took the final 2 steps. You know nothing about me, you arrogant jerk. Anger pulsed through me as time seemed to slow down around us. I could taste the singed hum to the air as I finally let loose the restless energy that, aside from cleaning up my snow the night before, hadn't been intentionally touched for a month. A bolt of lightning cracked and screamed, the noise deafening as it jumped from the clouds and hit the ground in front of the 4. They flew backward, crumpling to the ground in an unconscious heap from the impact. Gray Eyes jumped, looking at me in wide-eyed shock. 4 down, 1 to go. I warned you. Much to my surprise, he didn't run or react, choosing instead to take another step toward me, determination written on his face. I didn't waste another moment. With as wild a scream as I could manage, I lunged and punched him in the jaw. My everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong luck held its track record. I hadn't been paying attention to my emotions and rage, so it was consequently my fault when I realized that in my negligence, despite my earlier determination to be very, very extremely careful, I had sent a surge of raw, sizzling electricity with my punch. Oh, crap. His back arched as he was propelled backward, landing with a heavy thud 3 feet away. I watched horrified as his breathing slowed, and then his chest stood still. Crap, crap, crap! I was counting the seconds as I pleaded with his lifeless form to take a breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come on, breathe! I don't have time for this! I couldn't just leave him. I was now bound to his life because of my carelessness. 7, 8. Still nothing. Biting back a curse, I dumped my backpack on the ground and rushed to his side, shoving my knife back into my boot before checking his neck for a pulse. There was nothing. I raced through my jumbled memories of the CPR class I had taken over 8 years ago. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Why did this have to happen today? Why today of all days? I linked the fingers of my hands one over the top of the other and began the methodical procedure. I think I'm going to call you Dopehead. It's a very fitting name for such an idiot. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. My brain churned out the melody to match the rhythm of my hands. Pick a different song. Fine. Oh, 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 staying alive. Happy now? No, he's still not breathing. 3 cycles later, my CPR was doing nothing. He lay still and lifeless before me, his face taking on a gray tinge. I gave him 2 more breaths, trying not to think about the feeling of his lips, trying not to think about the feeling of my lips on his. This isn't working. I need an AED to restart his heart. Well, newsflash for you, we don't have an AED in the middle of the woods. You literally are an AED. You stopped his heart as easily enough. You stopped his heart easily enough. Surely it wouldn't be that hard to use the same process and restart it. I chewed my lip for a moment, considering the pros and cons of using my inheritance again. At this point, pros and cons didn't matter. It was either get his heart beating again, or face the darkness and abandon my sisters to the realm. Any day now. The longer you sit here, the harder it will be to get his heart beating again. I summoned the rest of my strength, boiling my concentration down to a single request of my stuttering heart. The sky grew dark as clouds began to gather overhead at my bidding. A low rumble of thunder vibrated through my fingertips as I placed my shaking hands on either side of his muscled chest. Please, please let this work. Crows screamed as they circled the air above us. I had mere minutes, if not seconds, before they found me. I'm running out of time. Focus. You have one chance to pull this off. With the final wisps of my energy, I focused on the clouds above me, calling them to my command and will. They began to swirl and boil at my urging as a cold sweat broke out over my forehead. The charge had to be powerful enough to undo what I had done, but if it was too powerful, I could very well kill both of us. A deadly calm washed over me as I created an image in my mind. I had one chance to save him before I finally collapsed over his dead body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then faint flickers of lightning danced in the air around us as seconds ticked by and my stomach churned with fear. Just as I was beginning to doubt my idea and ability, there was a sharp tug at the base of my skull, and the bolt struck. Everything went white. The pain from the force of the bolt striking between my shoulder blades was overwhelming. My head felt as if it was going to split open, and a deafening crash of thunder popped both of my ears into painful, ringing silence. A scream tore itself from my lips as the power surged through me, knocking me into a hunched position over his body. I control you. I contain you. I claim you. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely keep them on his chest. My whole body was going to explode if I didn't get the charge out of me. It took all of my concentration to resist the urge to clutch my head and scream until I couldn't make another sound. Down to him. Down. Down to him. I command you into him. Restart his heart. I pleaded with a vicious fire that spread through my limbs and choked the air out of my lungs. It crackled and hummed, and after a slight hesitation, slipped out of my hands and into his chest. I held my breath and waited as his body jerked, and everything around us fell silent. Thank you for tuning into this week's chapter of Kidnapping Grimm. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and as always, thank you for all of your support. Have a good day.